So let's get serious for 10 minutes. And I promise these 10 minutes are going to be very, very important. And the reason that's important is because we need to really get into understanding the problem that occurs, not just in our communities, but the problem that exists all around the world around girls' education and women empowerment. And I believe, and most of our volunteers, all of our volunteers, believe that it starts with men. If you want to drive change, you have to address the change. And in order for you to drive a change, you have to be open enough to tell a story. You know, a good mentor of mine once said, if you want to grow Armughan, be uncomfortable. Comfort and growth does not coexist. I'm sure that relates to most of you. If you've gone through life, you learn the most when you're uncomfortable. My uncomfortable moment was in 1970s. I was born in Pakistan till the age of 15. I didn't know I had a learning disability back then. I'm dyslexic. At that time, my mother was my champion. She didn't know either. She just said, you know, look at all these other kids. They're doing it. Why are you not able to do it? But she figured out that there was something about me that she wanted to focus on. That wasn't IQ because I wasn't a very good student. So what she taught me was EQ, the emotional quotient. And what she taught me was the LQ, which was the love quotient. Not something that a lot of Pakistani men or South Asian men talk about. You know, if you look at from those 1970s, when my parents fell on extremely, extremely hard times in North Nazabad A block, my mother was the one who decided to go in and make deals and try to work and try to get me into schools and my siblings into school. That was in 1970s. She's now 70 years old, and she still works for a living because she believes in that. So to me, being uncomfortable to tell the story, there's a reason for it, because there's lots of women, there's lots of girls who are just like my mom, my Ammi, who is championing the next girl. And it's up to us men to stand up and support them. So in order for us to support them, we need to understand what the story is. So if you look at Pakistan, by the way, has the second largest children out of school in the world the amount of children. That's 22 million children, 22 million. If you're from a small country, let's say 4 or 5 million people country, that's like 5 countries, all into one. 13 million girls from ages 7 to 16 don't go to school. 13 million girls don't go to school. There's cultural norms that our panel is going to talk about, but clearly you can see that, you know, Nigeria, by the way, is the first largest population of children out of school. There's a difference between Nigeria and Pakistan, I believe. I'm looking at like 80–90% of this room, people who've come from Pakistan, who've come from Middle East background, who come from Canadian backgrounds. Everybody's an immigrant from somewhere, but you know, I'm an extremely proud Pakistani, but I'm also a grateful Canadian. Because why? And most of us are grateful Canadians. But we all know what our roots are, and we have to realize when there's an epidemic that's happening around education, that fixes a lot of things. But then we also know what the cause of that 22 million is as well. And by the way, I had some aha moments because Sajid Salman, who's the current, he calls himself the pro bono president of TCF, he literally puts it in brackets. You know, I've learned a lot from him, and he actually took me to Houston to listen to some of the amazing TCF founders, and they brought a speaker who happened to be an Indian by background, married to a Pakistani woman, and he's a researcher at McKinsey and at Berkeley. And he actually showed us this data. He showed that 22 million didn't happen out of the blue. He said 22 million happened, 22 million children out of school happened because of all these reasons, right? There was pre-independence, divide and conquer, divide and rule, local education suppression. You know, we talk about feudal lords that are all out there. They don't want people to get educated, upheaval of economic systems. But the slide that he showed me next, that really blew my mind. This is a slide he showed all of us. 1947 is when Pakistan and India separated. Look at the key inflection points from 1981 to 2012. By all history books, Pakistan was doing really well in the 50s and 60s, even in the beginning of 70s. It was not until when the Charlie Wilson War, which was the proxy war that Pakistan unfortunately got involved in between the Soviet Union and the United States, that happened right in Afghanistan, and all of those refugees and others started to come into the country. Look at the blue line. Blue line shows you how much crime went up. And if that wasn't enough, then the fall of USSR happened, and after that 9/11 happened, and then it kept going up, the crime rate. Then look at when they started measuring the homicide rate, which is meaning how many people have been killed. And that has been going up. Now, imagine if you are the prime minister of the country, the president of the country, will you be focusing on building 170,000 schools? Or do you want to try to figure out how to bring crime down and how to stop the bloodshed that's happening in the streets? So that's sort of what happened. So to me, that is what we need to understand as a problem. Let's focus on what the solution is. The solution is TCF founders in 1995, 5 entrepreneurs decided enough is enough, and they had made some money, not a lot of money, and they decided to build 5 schools at that time. By the way, they're entrepreneurs. They happen to be Memons. They happen to be Chinyotis. They happen to be Balochis and Sindhis and others. They're from all walks of life. They decided they're going to build a school, and they're going to run it like a CEO, like we run all our corporations. They hired a CFO, they hired a legal counsel, they hired a salesperson, they hired everybody, and they said, let's go and make sure that we do it right, and we build a school where they will send their own children to. By the way, I've been to some of those TCF schools, and we'll hear from some people who have been to those TCF schools. That school is way better than the school I went to in Gulshan Iqbal. They focus on education like no tomorrow. By the way, they have now built 1,441 schools around the country. They're now educating 220,000 children. And you know what the cool part is? You know what the cool part is? It's considered now the #1 full unit schooling NGO in the world by United Nations. So if there's a story to be proud of, to be a Pakistani and to be a grateful Canadian, be proud of this story. That's an incredible story, incredible story. And by the way, they also made sure from 20 years ago, not yesterday when Me Too and Time's Up movement and it was cool to talk about women empowerment. They started 20 years ago to make sure that every school and every classroom has 50% girls and 50% boys. They don't start a school if they don't get 50% girls. They also thought about sexual abuse of these girls. They also thought about sexual abuse of boys, by the way. So they made sure that 100% of the faculty that teach these girls and boys are women. 100%. So, that's a picture that you see on one of the embedded heart in the communities on the slide. It literally shows you a slum, which is in Karachi. It's a Machhar colony. Machhar colony means the mosquito colony. I visited that school along with some of the other colleagues here who have gone. You see the school right in the background. It's right there. That's a school. What you see in front of it is the slums. So they build all schools in a kilometer walking distance from the slum or in the urban area. So no one has to take a bus or a school bus or anything like that. So they actually literally get it done this way. There's another myth out there that TCF only builds schools in Sindh, which is the southern province of Pakistan. That's a myth. Look at how many schools they've built in Punjab. There are more schools in Punjab than in Sindh. And the schools are everywhere. And they're making sure that they measure, as I said, they're running it like a CEO. And they've hired an external CEO now who comes from a very large bank who's running it. Along with some of the people I met there, they are way smarter than some of the data scientists I know who are working at these big Google AI companies and Facebook AIs and others. And they have quit their jobs to go and run this because they really feel that that is the difference that we need to drive. And if you flip back to the charts for a second, it shows you how they're measuring how many kids are getting A's, B's, C's, and D's. And what you see, by the way, is not just that data. They're checking training, how the teacher's training is going. They're checking how the school performance is, all the way in Sialkot somewhere or Skardu, where to build the next schools. They measure alumni tracking. which, by the way, blew my mind when I looked at this alumni. So let's go to the next chart. This is a chart that tells you 19,000 of these children have graduated out of TCF. TCF school goes to grade 10, kindergarten to grade 10, okay? After grade 10, 88% of these children ended up continuing their education. And not just at any university. Look at these universities. If you've been to Pakistan, these are the Ryersons of the world. These are the U of Ts, Waterloos, MITs, Harvards that are considered the Pakistani Harvards. It's very hard to get into. I know some of my friends here they all feel really proud that they went to these universities, and these kids are going to these universities, and they're actually having debates with these people who come from very affluent families, and they're doing incredible. Not only are they doing incredible, how many of them have gone into pre-engineering and pre-medical? Look at that. And I know that's an important thing for the South Asian community, but you know what's more important is life sciences. Liberal arts. Arts and commerce. That these kids are also going there. You know, that's really what it comes down to, which is how do you make sure that these kids are getting educated across all walks of life versus just one. So let me tell you a story that my daughter told outside about this girl, Mudassir Fatma. This story is she's in the slum, being raised by a single mother. Mother runs a livestock farm. Mother is able to send Mudassir to a TCF school because it's a subsidized school. She only has to pay 50 rupees, 60 rupees, that's nothing. Versus, by the way, it's 2,000 or 5,000 rupees, even for a regular Little Fox type private school these days in Pakistan. I went to Pakistan, it was 200 rupees. I think it's gone incredibly high. But more importantly, her mother, after she graduated, had to sell a few cows, believe it or not. For us, you know, that's not a big deal, but for them, it was a huge deal. She ended up sending her to university to do a master's in zoology. Incredible. That's not one story, by the way. There were 20 stories outside that you can listen to like that. There are hundreds of stories. There's a calendar right in front of you that you should take home with you that has 12 stories for every month, that how each one of the parents dedicated their life to sending their children there. So take a look at those calendars that are at your tables, and I would encourage you to take those home. Because we have them. I actually show them to all three of my children. We've talked about, every month, we actually sit down and talk about, look, beta, you know, this is what happened. That's an incredible story that you should take and be proud of and put it on your mantle. You know what's bigger? This was a total aha moment, which is that the first paycheck that this girl gets, the first paycheck, by the way, that's an average. The first paycheck they get, she earns 1.5 times more than her mother or father ever earned. That's an average, not just Mudassir. This is by average, all 19,000. So if mother earned something like 21,000 for working for 30 years, her first paycheck is 34,000 rupees. Imagine what happens if she just starts working for 2 or 3 years. So they're taking them out of the slums, and they're moving now into these areas of middle-class families, which is just incredible. I'm going to bring this to an end to tell you that TCF is doing a lot more. It's not just about these girls and these boys. TCF has built Agahi programs, which is about the mothers to actually go to night school at the same schools that are there. The teachers are from the community that are now teaching these mothers from the Agahi program. There's a Rabber mentorship program. You know, my son is about to go to university. I'm sure there's a lot of kids parents here who have children that are now teenagers. And if you struggle with how my wife and I struggle with our kids, which is really all about, you know, they're entitled, they're privileged, my kids. I'm not talking about yours. And we have to show them what it means. So you know what? If you're going to Pakistan for 2 months, for summer vacation or for winter, send them there for 5 days. Let me tell you, when I went there, I came out a changed person. That's why I started to, volunteer for TCF. Imagine what those children will feel. You can go take them, and they'll stay at Defense and Clifton and all the high-end areas, but then also send them to the slum and have them teach and have them mentor somebody. Have them focus on alumni development. This is the last thing I'll mention. This is huge because technology is what's coming. So they have now, TCF has rolled out iPads. They have rolled out learning programs for teachers so that teachers who are sitting all the way away from TCF headquarters, how do they learn? So they learn on their phones or on their iPads that the training curriculum is sent down to them. And there's many technology solutions that they're now bringing to the table. You know what's, they've taken 1,400 schools, 1,441. Government likes them so much now that they're giving them their public schools. By the way, the top picture shows you what a regular public school looks like in Pakistan. That's an actual picture of a public school in Lahore. The bottom is when TCF took over that school and started running it. You know how much the government pays for one kid? 700 rupees. TCF spends 1,400, and the government doesn't have the dollars for them. TCF cannot take any more schools because they are maxed at $30 million. Their donations are struggling. I mean, I'll show you the chart that in Canada how we're struggling. It's happening everywhere. They've been winning all of these awards, as I mentioned, World Economic Forum and the United Nations and others who are giving them these awards. But look at how we have been performing in Canada. There's about 150,000 Pakistanis who live in the GTA. We only raise $1.8 million a year. And look at how we've been going over the last few years. Our OPEX, that's the line that we all spend an incredibly low amount. No one ever takes dollars. That 4% is basically what the credit card company charges to process the donations that you do. So I believe that tonight, if we can all come together, and if this story was heartwarming, wait until you hear the next stories, because education to me, educating you, is our number one priority. We have to do that. I really hope that after this, you feel that a child's life is precious. It's not just your child's life. It's a precious life. Anybody's daughter is as precious as my daughter or your daughter, and they should be educated. So with that, we're going to run a quick video, and I'm going to introduce the next speaker. So let's play the video, please.